I was hoping the tears weren't for me, and I hadn't even started yet. Sorry, when you visit other places, you have lots of stuff you got to wade through before you're ready. And I'm getting there. Here we are. All right. Today starts out with another fish story, if you will. Turns out today the kids are going to be talking about Jonah, too, another fish story. But I'm going to share a couple of actual things about fishing as they relate to my life. You know, when I grew up, we did fishing for the sport, if you will. And I was always taught, if you're not going to keep it, you better release it. Set it back for somebody else. Then there came times when I was in the service, and even some after, where I engaged in a different kind of fishing. It wasn't professional like you see on Deadliest Catch or Wicked Tuna or some of those things. It was much closer to subsistence. And I was fishing to put a substantial amount of food on our family's table, on my own table. In Alaska, I was there as an E-nothing in the military. At the time, the cost of a gallon of milk in Alaska was over $4, and this is 30 years ago. A loaf of bread was closer to $3. Even with adjustments based on location, made it really kind of tight to support a family. One of the nice things about Alaska is that they have subsistence fishing, a lot of it. And I did some of what was known as dip netting. You go down to a river, and the one I usually went to was the Copper River, and the current is pushing this way downstream, but at particular times of the year, you got all kinds of salmon going this way upstream. And you'd have a long pole, about 15, 20 foot long, with a big old net, and I can't get my arms as big around as that net is. And you'd be wearing chest waders, not hip waders, and they were insulated. You don't want to be in that water coming off the glaciers. And you'd kind of wade out into the middle, and there'd be about 10, 12 feet offshore, there was a little bit of a bar where you could stand. If you went 2 feet further, you were up to here in water and going downstream in a hurry. And you'd be standing there with this net, and you'd be holding it, trying to hold it perpendicular to the water, and the current's pushing you in the net that way, and when it starts going upstream, you know you got a fish. You could get, as a head of household, up to 40 fish in a year that way. And I really got to like salmon steaks, salmon fillet, smoked salmon, you name it. Still one of my favorite breakfasts when I feel rich is I'll go to Einstein's and get Nova Lox on a bagel. But the other time it was more subsistence for me. I had been stationed in Nebraska for a short while. My family was still up in Alaska. So I was sending most of what I could up to them. And they had a lake, and I would go fishing there. And it was stocked, and most people were there looking to get, a trout or a bluegill or a crappie or whatever. Well, they were getting them and setting them back. And that was fine for me because I was getting them, and that was my dinner for the day. The fishing Peter and those were doing, it was somewhere of a cross between subsistence and a profession. It's the way they earn their living. So when Jesus asked the first time, "Do you love me more than these?" What was he asking about? More than these the career of fishing? More than these, the other disciples? Or more than these disciples love me? Every time Peter was asked a question, his answer was absolutely the same. You know I love you, Lord. I think part of the heart of what we have to look at here is Jesus' response to Peter's answer. Now, recently, if you've been watching any of the news, our friends in the United Methodist Church, not just nationally, but globally, made some changes to their constitution. And they're pretty significant for the church. One of the folks that they interviewed afterwards said, "These changes ensure a place at the Lord's table for many more from now on." And you have to kind of think, well, what kind of changes were they talking about? Well, the first one seemed to fit the first thing that Jesus commanded, feeding the lambs. Remember, lambs are baby sheep, although we tend to generalize all as the same. Sometimes you got to think in terms of the word. So he's telling them, feed the youngest members of the flock, the ones who may be the neediest, the ones who know least on what they're doing. To me, that kind of says, everybody's to be welcome at this table, whether they're new in faith or they've been worshiping for their entire life long. If they're coming here as in-laws, outlaws, friends, enemies, frenemies, anything's in between, they're welcome. Our arms are thrown wide. Regardless of the situation, I think we need to make sure that when we invite them to the table to feed the lambs and meet their needs, we make sure it fits their needs. The United Methodist Church, one of the things they did was they established some regional structure across the world to allow ministry to be shaped by the context in which it is being practiced. I think we need to remember that too. When we do ministry in a community, we have different contexts. We can't say, oh, we're going to take a stereo to somebody that lives on the street and say, hey, we did something great. You can't take canned things that they don't have a can opener for. You can't take things that need to be heated when they don't have a heat source. The second thing that Jesus told Peter was take care of or look after the sheep. A lot of texts say tend or shepherd. If that helps you understand it better, that's great. You got to ensure the safety of everybody who is at the table while they are there. You have to offer protection in their good places and in their bad places. Even at a risk for ourselves. And I think that's the hardest thing for us to remember. Henry Nouwen once wrote that the only time the church is really doing its best is when it's taking the greatest risk. I think that holds true for us too. The Methodists strengthened their mandate across the world to confront racism in all its forms, inequalities of any kind, white privilege and supremacy, or for us, European supremacy. We've wrestled with those things, and sometimes we still continue to. And it's in the wrestling, I think, that we tend the sheep. In our world this day in this country, we've seen diversity, equity, and inclusion supposedly being erased. I have two words, and I can't say them in this pulpit, but they concern bovines. One time I thought I was on the wrong side of it because I lost jobs because of it. But looking on backward, I know it was right. And I know it's still right to make sure that we do our best to protect those that God entrusts us with, from the little bittiest to the oldest, and everyone in between. Then the third time around, Peter's told once again, feed the sheep. This gets back to me, remembering growing up in a family of 10, in a house with one bathroom, no shower. Saturday nights before church were a lot of fun. Bathroom in the morning was a lot of fun. But there was always room at the table for friends, for guests. When we were kids, my dad made it a point to invite friends that were Jewish, Black, Hispanic, whatever, so the 8 of us would be exposed to others, and we could talk and have dialogue and understand what mattered for them and how it related to us. Mom would make spaghetti. Somebody was coming. You know what happened? The women could tell you. Put another cup of water in the sauce. There's always room. I think that's what we have to remember with this third time. There is always room at the table for more. The Methodists, and the thing that they said that really, to my mind, made room at the table, they removed any limitation based on race, gender, or ability for membership and office within the United Methodist Church. They took away what had been sometimes considered second-class clergy. For me, I would have been second-class clergy. Why? I wear hearing aids. Somebody who was in a chair would be second-class clergy. Why? They need help getting in and out or getting around. They remove that stricture. And I think for us, we have to make sure we do too. There is room at the table for all in God's kingdom. It is up to us as God's children to make sure we allow that room. I would pray in your home, my home, and in our lives, we would make it so. Amen.